Working Cows Podcast, episode 368. This episode is brought to you by Ranch Right. This episode is also brought to you by the South Dakota Grassland Coalition.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Conry, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag Studios. And this episode is brought to you by Ranch Right. We've all been there. You watch the videos on YouTube. You've read all the books that you can find. You've listened to some compelling episodes of various podcasts. You're in. Grazing is going to save the ranch. And while that might be true, there tends to always be a bigger problem. A bad gross margin, even with increased turnover, is still a bad gross margin. And with a bad gross margin, if you're grazing better and running more cows, all you're going to do is go broke faster. Don't be a zealot. Focus on profitability. After all, it's possible to out-business a bad grazing plan, but you will always struggle to out-graze a bad business plan. Bad business is just bad business, plain and simple. Don't get stuck there. Ranch Right has a team of financial experts who will help you to focus on profitability and ranching right. Using their actionable financials, you can create generational wealth and become a profitability zealot rather than a grazing zealot. If you're ready to see the power of good business and profitability, head over to ranchrightllc.com to book your free consultation now. Very excited to be joined by Ellen Bench today. Ellen is a homeopathic practitioner in Montana, and she's traveled all over the country and some outside the country as well, instructing people how to approach livestock health from a homeopathic perspective. And we're going to talk to her today about some of the different ways that she has developed to go about doing that and some of the best ways to deliver these homeopathic remedies and some of the things that they have developed formulas for treating. And again, thanks to Steve Campbell for putting me in touch with Ellen. Really appreciate this connection. So Ellen, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
Yes, sir. Clay, glad to be with you.
I guess what I want to talk to you today about is a little bit of your philosophy of livestock health and ways that we can approach that from a more natural framework, I guess.
So what homeopathy has to offer, which is my expertise, I live here in Montana and I've traveled all over the Midwest to be of assistance to the farmers and ranchers, very similar to what Steve does, is gives a lot of good individual advice. And the other thing that I think that I have in common with Steve is we both are able to produce some outstanding results. So I'm happy to share that opportunity to share and facilitate your ranchers. The difference with homeopathy is our delivery system and our philosophy. So the philosophy is that we make the animals healthier, that we resolve disease instead of medicating it. So by using conventional vaccines or antibiotics, we're putting disease in the body and we're stuffing it or suppressing it is the proper word, so that it comes back again, which is why we get reinfections. So humans get them too. We get ear infections over and over, strep over and over, or worse than that, we see in humans more commonly than animals, the side effects. And the side effects are to weaken and to have recurrent problems. So the problems seem to get worse and worse in a herd that is a long-term and aged community. So what we want to do is do the opposite. We want to get rid of whatever disease is present. So if that turns out to be a staph or a strep or a pink eye or a foot rot or mastitis, the common challenges that I hear from the ranchers, especially for dairies, is that it's in the soil, the contamination, and that the animals continually are either fed an antibiotic as a daily part of their regimen, or they're constantly treating sick animals, especially the calves. that are getting the infections directly from the mother or from a contaminated environment. And if we think about that for people, is that you touch doorknobs and you eat at restaurants and touch a salt and pepper shaker, and the kids, if you're with them, put it in their mouth. I mean, they're directly in contact all the time with bacteria and viruses. So what's the difference in somebody that gets sick and somebody that doesn't? Is the functioning of that immune system or vitality. So in homeopathy, we raise that. And Steve does that too. We talk about doing salt and minerals and offering what the animals need to make them healthier, which makes them less vulnerable to disease. In homeopathy, we're using ultra diluted substances. They're diluted 1 part per million, 1 part per billion, 1 part per octillion. We're delivering them. And I like to use the method where we're actually spraying salt, and we can use Steve's SA or SEA 90, or we can use Redmond salt. That's the coarser the salt, I think the easier it is to medicate it. But we're going to take a concentrate that's homeopathic and spray it on that salt crystal and then put it out free choice. And what we get is about 95% or more effectiveness. So we're not going to just medicate pink eye, we're going to stop it from spreading. We're going to give everybody's immune system a boost instead of actually making it sick by using a vaccine.
So what's the mechanism as far as applying these applications?
When we use drugs, we're trying to get it into the bloodstream. And it actually settles in an organ. So we get illness that's actually stored. And the delusion is that when we store up illness, that's actually healthier, that we've given the body an imprint is the philosophy, that we have an exercise we've gone through by being vaccinated to develop immunity to the disease. But the truth is that like in pink eye, it's nearly 0% effective. So in our flu vaccine that we use for people, it's probably less than 10 to 20% effective. So the illusion is we're creating heightened immunity, but when in reality, we're diminishing it. The results that we get by detoxing a vaccine in a herd, which I call it an immune detox, which is the initial step in my program, is to clean them up. And what you see already is that they are brighter, shinier, shut off better, and are less sickly. Then we're going to reprotect them, which we can do with what's called homeopathic prophylaxis, which was the original vaccination protocol to use in the world. We did it for malaria and typhus and plague effectively, and the influenza, even from 1917-18, protecting huge amounts of the population with no death loss. So we want to utilize a ultra diluted natural substance. Like I said, we call it in homeopathy homeopathic prophylaxis, which is protection. We're not giving disease in the form of it making you sick like real bacteria and live viruses. We're actually telling the brain, pay attention, the nervous system to respond to that by being ready or developing that immunity without making the animal sick. So we have that ability to do all animal diseases that you have the desire to protect, like Clostridia, like brucellosis, like pink eye, etc. So we can protect the herd. The next thing we want to do is we want to facilitate what many of you are doing by adding mineral or supplements into either A, the soil, or B, the ration, is to actually use it energetically on the salt that we put out free choice to help them assimilate minerals. So the best example, again, is a human example as to having osteoporosis. Is you can eat all the calcium you want, it makes no difference whatsoever. So what we want to do, and there's been 30-year studies on different substances that we can do to uptake calcium, but it doesn't work. So what happens is that when we're no longer calcium deficient, the parasites are remarkably diminished. So one of the field trials we did were with 2 bulls that I kept one unmedicated and medicated the other with the homeopathic remedy for mineral absorption. And what happened was the flies were flying over one bull and not the other. So it's very remarkable to realize that flies are ever present, but how infested the animal gets increases by their lack of health. So that happens with internal parasites as well as external parasites, but we can put a weekly dose of that salt out for those herd animals and protect them and keep their immunities up and use that salt. And what happens is that the salt and mineral consumption, and I've heard as many, the last time Steve talked, he was talking about some of these cattle getting 7 ounces of salt a day. The truth is that the more they assimilate, the less they need to consume to accomplish the same task. So we see a big reduction usually at the end of year 1, if not in year 2, and then more even in year 3, that they're needing less and less supplementation and utilizing minerals and other elements, and detoxing heavy metals I put in there as well. They're spraying aluminum, we understand. There's copper problems or deficiencies in selenium. So I've added those substances to that improved mineral absorption, or we call it pro-vitality for animals, so that they not only assimilate, but also have the potential of getting rid of what's too much.
And so the pro-vitality for animals is actually sprayed on the animals themselves topically, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
The products that I have formulated, I've made in concentrates. The concentrates can be used on an individual animal. Let's say you had an animal down. It can be used directly, and it's used on a mucous membrane, usually on their nose. We can spray it there. And doing cattle is a gift because of that massive tongue, and they lick their nose constantly. It's a great way to provide a remedy for them. If we use dairies, we can do it in the vulva. We can spray the vulva. So in the case of mastitis, or let's say a retained placenta, we can medicate the animal and get results within minutes to, an hour or, a day, depending on what the infection is. So it's pretty fast acting. It's also easy, it's safe and non-toxic, and all of the remedies are diluted. So there's no danger for you or your hands or your family members who are medicating sick animals either. But the way to do a herd, which it's difficult to even riding around on a horse or a four-wheeler with a sprayer to spray the animals directly. They don't necessarily like being sprayed in the face. So what we do instead is we're going to medicate the salt. And I think traveling and seeing the entrepreneurship and the differences in the way we all do our cattle is, a huge variety. Some will have overflowing tanks from windmills, and some have inline water systems. Some the animals are drinking from a natural source like a creek or a pond. So it was a challenge to be able to come up with a universal way of being able to get the remedy out. So I came up with the plan to medicate the salt. So if we spray the mineral, the remedy actually sticks to it. We can spray bulk amounts, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 500 pounds. And then we put it out free choice, and the animals will consume that salt and get whatever we're trying to accomplish, whether that's protection or actual treatment. So in something like pink eye, interestingly enough, not only are we protecting the animals and keeping them from spreading it, but we can actually get rid of the symptoms and restore some of that lost vision and those horrible cataracts that we get within a couple of days in some cases. So the herd actually shows signs of improvement, not that they're just not sick. They're not symptomatic. So the other thing that we want to know about that is if that's in the soil or it's spread by the birds in your neighborhood from somebody else's pasture, that your animals will, be indifferent to it, know how to defend against it. I did some research before this presentation. There was a really good study published in Australia at the cost of actually trying to prevent and medicate the animals, getting little or no side effects, much less the loss they had from reduced prices when they go to sell their sick animals or the somewhat defective, along with the amount of labor it takes to take care of animals that are ill. But the remedies produce far significant results easier to administer, and the salt is like a dream come true. We have, in some cases, medicated water tanks for inline water systems, which are commonly used in dairies or confinement facilities, which isn't our favorite thing to talk about. But they exist in different parts of the country. And in some cases, like Minnesota, where it's mandated that the animals are kept inside instead of outside, where we can control the water. But for free watering, it's a difficulty. So what we do is medicate the salt. It's very inexpensive. We can take a 1 gallon water jug half full and medicate 1,000 pounds of salt. It costs less than a penny a dose in that particular case. If we directly medicate the animal from the concentrate in there on the animal themselves, like we would do if we put them through the chute, like you might do if you castrate and brand, normally you would be doing tetanus. That's included in the remedy for castrating and branding, so that's not required. So you can spray them coming through the chute. We can also spray them while we're loading them to minimize things like travel stress. There are many ways that we can apply the remedy. If we spray it directly, the cost is 5 cents an animal. If we dilute the concentrate in water, it costs us, like I said, less than a penny. If we're doing salt, it's even less than that. So it's pretty economical and pretty reliable. And I think the other thing interesting about remedies is they have no shelf life. So as long as you take care of that bottle and it stays sealed in a clean place, we can keep that remedy indefinitely. But remedies are made for common problems like pink eye, like foot rot, like mastitis, like having a retained placenta. But we can also do a crisis management, eliminating any need for antibiotics in your entire herd, like having lump jaw is actually getting rid of the abscess tooth, restoring them back to eating and drinking, and not having to call or put down, an expensive animal. We can enhance your ability to diminish open cows. We can treat pneumonia or prevent it even better. So I don't think there's anything or any conditions that involve cattle or sheep that I haven't created a resolution for.
Very good. I appreciate that very much. You've used a couple of times the term assimilation. Is that similar to the idea of bioavailability?
Well, what happens is that, no, it's actually, if back to the woman who has osteoporosis and we try to eat calcium to make the bone stronger and they don't assimilate it, there's no signs of improvement. If we use the remedy to tell the brain to assimilate or to build the bone, it will do it without having to consume calcium. When calcium is deficient, the biggest sign of deficiency is parasites. So it's huge in contributing by this is an experiment that happened by accident in field trials, is the more minerals they assimilated, the less parasites existed. So wahoo, I mean, the healthier the animal, and it's true if you look at all of biology in general, is that the unhealthy plants and animals both suffer from parasites when something's sick or rotten. So I talked to Steve about getting the animals alkaline, which was what was happening when he was using salt and not running high acid. The goal is to be as alkaline as possible, which is why I always wondered why having high sugar in our feed, like corn, which creates fat, is actually negative for the animal's health. We're making them acid by using anything that's high sugar. So when we use minerals appropriately, we're achieving higher pH. We're getting more alkaline. And the benefits of that are the less need for things like an antibiotic. The more alkaline you are, the less bacteria can survive in that environment, as well as parasites.
Yeah, very good. What is, and we've talked about the delivery system, but what's the mechanism? What is actually going on? I see here that you've got remedies for all kinds of different diseases for cattle, sheep, horses, goats, all, and the list goes on. So what's the actual mechanism? Are all of these different mixtures of the same base material, or are they all pretty different when you're looking at the hormonal wake up for cattle versus something for horses, or even a different mechanism for cattle? Are they fairly different in what's actually driving the function of them?
So the formulas are a little bit different. So formulas for protecting sheep would be different than what we're using to protect the cattle. What we're using for protection, or what we call immune boost, is actually homeopathic prophylaxis. So we're using the remedies like you would be familiar with in a vaccine. So a remedy made from a herpes virus, or a remedy made from brucellosis, or a remedy made from a disease material. That in 1 part per billion, 1 part per octillion, instead of putting it in the bloodstream to make the animal sick and calling that an improvement in their immunity, what we do instead is give it to the nervous system, and the brain is the one that's in charge. Our brain tells our heart to beat, us to breathe, to develop mucus, to be hungry, to defecate. All bodily functions, mentally and physically, come through the nervous system. They don't come from your stomach. So in this particular case, we're telling the brain, the nervous system, to take action and to recognize the disease material. We don't have to make them sick to get an immune boost. We're getting an immunity boost by telling it to the nervous system. And the response is outstanding.
Sure. So the mineral, when we're applying the product to the salt or the mineral, we're not necessarily making that mineral more bioavailable or anything like that. It's actually the fact that it's touching that mucous membrane that is doing the work, right?
Right. The delivery system is we're using the mineral because the animals are fed mineral, right? So it's easy, it's inexpensive, and it gives us width and depth in the herd, is that we can distribute it easily amongst a large group of animals. So that's our delivery. We're actually putting the remedy on the salt. It's actually imprinted or absorbed onto the material, salt, the mineral. So now what happens is that it's telling the brain, hey, use that salt, use that selenium, get rid of the extra copper. So that's happening based upon what I put in that remedy. So what's in there are all the minerals, the top 13 minerals that we are required to be healthy, along with the metals that we need. So it has copper, selenium, it has sulfur and magnesium and potassium and calcium, etc., so that it's messaging each one of those to the animal, and they're going to use or discharge what's required or excess.
Sure. Tell me a little bit more about the hormonal wake up and some of the things that it has been shown to do.
So fertility is normal. Infertility is not. Infertility comes from infections or from things like moldy hay, where you can't maintain a pregnancy. So we can AI the cattle, but they may not hold, or you'll end up with the open cows. So we can diminish that remarkably by enhancing the available hormones, by telling them to be prepared, to be hormonally imbalanced, to have fertility available. So it's much more efficient, and our our open cows are way diminished in herds that use that hormonal wake up before breeding. So there are instructions on my website for the frequency to use these remedies, or how to be prepared before breeding. Let's say we're going to do 30 days ahead of time. We're not doing it by giving hormones. We're doing it by telling the brain or the nervous system to do it itself. So it's to enhance, or to give it the message that it's time, or that it's, to ripen them, if you want to call it that, without using drugs or synthetics to accomplish the job.
And what kind of difference have you seen it make in a herd that as you've been doing some studies?
In the herds that use my product, I have very few open. I would say less than 1%.
And as far as timing and strategy, Does it depend from herd to herd, or do some herds you see a immediate starting of the cyclicity, or is it always pretty consistently something that you can count on putting it out this many days before turning the bulls out, and it's gonna improve?
I think that it needs to be preceded by a hormonal cycle. So in women, we have 28-day cycles. We want to do it so that they come into heat naturally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing would happen in the animals. You have to prepare them. We're not drugging them. We're enhancing normal function. There are no remedies that force unnatural things to happen. We can't create miscarriage. We can't create abscesses. We can't create cancer. We can't create brucellosis. What we're doing is preparing the body to enhance the function that's normal. So we never see hyperactivity. We see normal activity. And this is a problem, by the way. This is a great question for dairies, because the dairies are hyper producing. They're feeding hormones and trying to increase milk production by sometimes a third, if not 50%. And what happens is the cows last 1/3 as long lifespan, and the milk is now medicated. So I can't use a remedy to produce an abnormal level of milk production, only a normal one. Mm. So I get asked that question now and then, is that transition for dairy farmers is the most difficult, because they don't want to give up that 1/3 extra income, even though in the long run they're losing by having to replace the cattle, right? The cows. So it depends on their point of view as to whether or not they want long-term investment or short. In meat cattle, it doesn't take a season. We're not doing anything to make them, abnormal. Or if we want to put on a weight as an example, we can enhance their ability to process, but we can't. They're not putting on, I would call fake weight. It's not water weight. It's not just bulk. It's because the meat's healthy and the animal is thriving.
Yeah, no, I think that a lot of, obviously our hyper focus on production and continuing to up the productivity of our agricultural systems, from row crops to to dairy, to beef and chicken and pork, and everything has been just so driven by productivity over the last number of years. I think we have made some massive sacrifices in the health, the nutrient density of our food as a result of that. And I'm guessing that you would agree.
Yes, sir.
And so this is one of those things that can help us return to not unnatural levels of productivity, but natural levels of productivity. And part of this, part of the result of that is better quality end food product, right?
And also higher profitability, because we're going to spend less to maintain their health. We're going to appeal to a market that's willing to pay for purity, for cleanliness, and for quality. So that market is a great market to be in. We want to be in that natural market, and people are open to the fact that their animals are not vaccinated. They are, in fact, protected. So anybody goes to the feedlot, I give them a certificate that they've purchased the product that included those items that allow them to go through that feedlot. Through that barn cell. So ultimately, there's no dollar loss there. And actually, the opposite should take place, is that we want a higher price per pound, not a lesser one. The amount of demand for natural is humongous. If we go a stretch further and want to say organic, all homeopathic remedies are organically qualified. So we can do it I have a product for crops too. So we can foliar or we can spray and do the same thing, where the crops are actually bringing a higher nutrient value and hence are way less parasitic, which allows us to be more successful in that organic market. So there's no lack of market share for that natural community. And I think now that we're talking about them putting other things that are undesirable in the vaccines, it should be a red alert for all of us that there are some things that we absolutely don't want to be forced to do to our animals. And like I said, it's profitable to not have to medicate. It's profitable to work, less, do less maintenance, less culling, less taking a discount for animals that are not high performing. So homeopathy really facilitates all of those aspects. Don't have a huge vet bill.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, the South Dakota Grassland Coalition. If you're in the business of managing livestock, you've probably experienced drought, shortage of time, not enough help, and hefty debt. But facing one or even all of these challenges doesn't have to leave you worrying about how you'll make it through another year. Learn how to increase your stocking rates, extend your grazing season, increase plant diversity, retain moisture in your soil, spend less time and money on weed control, and much more at one of the South Dakota Grassland Coalition's grazing schools. During this 3-day intensive program, area producers along with presenters from state and local agencies combine hands-on activities in the field with classroom-style presentations to walk you through the steps necessary to create a grazing plan that suits your unique operation. Reserve your spot at one of the 3 grazing schools today at sdgrass.org. What would you say is the implementation process? What kind of process would you recommend? Is it a cold turkey, rip the Band-Aid off, quit all of the pharmaceuticals and synthetics, and go straight to what your product? Is that how you look at it?
I think what the optimum, the best, the most effective is to jump ship, is to say, what can I do to replace these things that I'm already doing or that I have fear that they could occur, which, makes you weak in the knees about I'm doing it because I'm afraid. I think that the amount of referrals and the amount of success that the product brings has a really low learning curve to achieve that. So if you stop vaccinating, you can use immune boost. And use it the way you were using it. If you're running them through the chute, go ahead and run them through the chute. You can spray them with the remedy instead of having to give them a needle. If you're going to worm them, you can do it on the salt. You don't need to be buying arsenic for your animals and reducing their overall health, which is, by the way, why we have to do it so often, is they're actually more and more unhealthy with the protocol that you're used to using than healthy. I did go to hog confinement in Iowa, and it was a really bizarre experience. I walked through being observant and trying to learn as much as I could about what they were doing and why they were doing it. And at the end of the tour of this humongous facility at thousands and thousands of animals, I asked a fellow why there were so many dead piglets scattered throughout the building. And he said what they were doing was immunizing the other pigs, and that they left those dead pigs there, which, by the way, were covered in all kinds of ulcerous sores. It was really kind of obscene. And ultimately, he said that then when they're done, after a day or two of leaving them sick to immunize the rest of the population, that then they fed them to the pregnant sows. I said, if that theory was true, if we could feed sickness to healthy animals under the delusion and made them healthier, why wouldn't we feed them the healthiest animals? And that's what he had a doctorate, and the manager had a master's degree in animal husbandry. I mean, if that's what they're teaching, it's moronic.
Did we not learn anything from mad cow disease?
I don't have. Yeah, apparently not. But this was devastating to have to deal with that kind of thinking. So there is a learning curve, is to relearn that when we immunize, we're not protecting. We're not building immunity. What we're building is the fact that producing a titer for the flu or for brucellosis in the cattle is evidence they're sick. It's not evidence they have more immunity. what they're telling us is not really truthful.
If we were building immunity, we wouldn't have to do it year after year, right?
Or more.
Yeah, right. And that is something that you said too, is that this is something that they should need less of these things going forward. And I don't know, was that referring to the supplements with the salt, or is that referring to even the products that you are selling? Is that something that you can get them kind of functioning well and then use as needed basis?
There's two answers to that question. The cleanup, as long as you're not adding to your herd, it only needs to be done initially. You can also clean up on arrival any additions to your herd, so that we put them into our herd clean. We protect them biannually. So we're going to give their brain a boost and tell them, hey, we're going to protect them for the winter weather or for whatever the other challenges are. In some areas, it's damp and wet and full of mold, and different bacteria or viruses grow in that environment. We're going to give them a heads up. We can do it twice a year. When we use Pro Vitality, we're going to use that once. We can use it as often as once a week in the beginning to once a month for maintenance. And what happens is that they're going to eat less and less mineral because they're going to use it more efficiently. We want them to eat a little mineral. We have remedy on it. I mean, we want them to consume what they need, and they're pretty smart. I rarely have to add it to anything like molasses or anything to enhance their willingness to consume it. In the case of having an animal that's vulnerable or sick, we can medicate them either directly, or if the neighbor's got pink eye, you're going to throw pink eye out for your animals and protect them. So we can do acute maintenance too. We can do acute prevention. And if we have that small percentage that eke through that are sick, we can individually medicate them. We can confine them is the best thing that we can do, and then offer them that medicated salt. It's not really that difficult, but it'll do prevention and for the rest of the herd as well. If you fear contamination, I'm trying to think of some other reasons that I would want to medicate regularly, and I think the answer might be that we're going to do parasites. So parasites typically change with the season changes. So depending on what area we live in, we want to protect them before that cold weather. If you're in North Dakota, Nebraska, that is having a potentially hard winter, we're going to change that up a little for seasonally for some parts of the country. So doing that anti-parasitic is another routine. If we're going to breed the cows, then we're going to give them a heads up. That's only getting used once a year, right? If we have an infection or an injury, there's remedies to take care of those acute problems as well. I do get some odd things that occur now and then. One year in Nebraska, I have thousands and thousands of cattle that are using these remedies. And I was getting calls that they were not just getting pink eye or foot rot, which used to appear individually, but they were getting it together. And interestingly enough, I reformulated the remedy to make sure that it would do both. And how odd it was that they occurred together. So every once in a while, something queer happens where I make adjustments in the formula. But most of these formulas, I have them for scours. I have it for any kind of, like I said, metritis. If you've got a dirty bull or you're going to turn a bull out, that's probably the number one reason for abortion in cattle. Number two is moldy hay. And moldy hay will also keep you from getting pneumonia. Most of that pneumonia comes from that contamination, and mold, interestingly enough, grows in grass 24/7. So anytime we get something that we consider to be respiratory that doesn't respond to a respiratory remedy, moldy hay is my go-to. It always works. So detoxing the mold is, a common occurrence. I have remedies like for castrating, branding, stress, and trauma. And that branding and castrating is not a pleasant experience for the staff as well as the cattle. But ultimately, we can spray them. It diminishes the pain. It prevents them from getting infection. It diminishes the stress once they're released from that chute. So very effective. And we're going to give them at that same time tetanus protection. So I haven't had any complaints about that remedy either. It's very effective. Another favorite is the weaning remedy. If you're going to separate those cattle, you can throw out that salt, and you'd be amazed at how few ball and calves you have, and that there's no stress on the cow either. That she's easy to separate, and the balling is minimized. So there's some, really some remedies we only use once a year, right? I think having remedies on hand for things like a retained placenta, it needs to be in your toolbox in the truck. If you're out there getting ready to pull calves, or you need it, you squirt them while you got them down, and you should have a placenta in anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. So we want to diminish as many needs for meds with a vet as absolutely possible.
And a few times throughout this conversation, you've referred to the remedy by the thing it's treating. So moldy hay relief helps relieve pneumonia as well, right? I mean, that's what you were saying.
The respiratory, right? Because it's difficult to get rid of, but we can see the signs early on, so we can treat right away. I work a lot in cold country, so pneumonia is really a threat. So I'm just telling you that, interestingly enough, that remedy provides, way more than any antibiotic could ever even dream about, and a lot faster too. So I think that the speed of a remedy, because it's energetic instead of being a physical dose, oftentimes will be, surprising how quick you can get results.
What are some of your favorite success stories from implementing these remedies?
Going out on, they're out checking the herd and they've got one down with bloat. So squirt them with the bloat remedy, and while they're coming back to give them another dose, 10 minutes later, they're already up and back in the herd.
Right. And how about...
life-saving situations. I think my favorite was treating for abscess. So I've got this major abscess the size of a grapefruit on the jaw, and being able to use the remedy. They couldn't eat or drink. They're losing weight. They look terrible. Their back is swayed and their head's hanging. So within a day, I had them eating and drinking, and in a couple of weeks, I had that abscess gone. Another one that's commonly used and that I don't use, but I commonly get good feedback on, is fungal. Anything warty on the animals, growths, they go away. So,
yeah.
Having them using the wormer, of course, and that Pro Vitality, they should shut off pretty for you. I think the pleasant information I get back, and that Betcher there in Nebraska had 1,000 certified organic cattle, and he was telling me that after being on the remedies for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that he had less and less work and was spending less and less on maintenance and prevention and treatment every year. So he was, extremely pleased. And I think that posting those referrals to the website, they're there audio and they're there, for you to read if you want to look at them. But I have some live classes that are coming up, one in Nebraska in June and one in Bismarck, North Dakota, I'll be doing in August. But I try to teach and facilitate as often as I can force myself to leave Montana. I used to have, before COVID, I was on the road at least 3 cities a month. Now I'm down to doing it quarterly. I try to leave less and less and do more and more on either private consultations or doing them. I can even do them like this by webinars to be able to teach those farmers and ranchers how to do things a little bit different. I think that the transition and where my remedy it really shines is in that desire to do it different, fear to do it different, not having enough answers, not being able to have somebody on call if they need them. And we provide all that. We provide the ability to transition easily, to not spend a ton of money, to produce results, and to be there if they have a problem, either in implementing the product or where they've had a returning illness in their herd.
Yeah, very good. Do you know when that one in June is coming up?
June class is 22 June, and I'm going to be near O'Neill. I'm going to be in a town called Inman.
Okay,
June
22nd.
Community Center. 22 June, Inman, Nebraska.
Okay. Yep. And
24 August is Bismarck, North Dakota.
Perfect. I'll have links to your website where they can find that schedule. Is that right?
You bet.
Yep. It'll be in the show notes page for today, and you can go there and check it out. This should be out a couple of weeks before that Nebraska date. And so if you're interested and you're in the neighborhood within striking distance, I think it's worth the trip for sure. Sounds like.
Thank you so much, Clay. I really, I think Steve Campbell and I both have the same intention. We want healthier animals. We want to medicate less. We want to produce a fine product. We want to be proud to eat it. I know a lot of those dairies, when I visit them, the family members don't drink any of the milk that comes out of their facility. They buy it in the market pasteurized because it's yucky. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to be in that position. We want to be proud of what we're producing and know that there are solutions, and medicating is really not the best answer. It's pretty desperate when you think about it. Yep. And not producing the same level of results for sure.
Do you think that the market demand for more natural food, more organic food is unmet? There's more demand than there is supply for natural and organic food?
You bet there is. The piece that I don't offer is the marketing piece. So being able to get the word out. I mean, that there's some people still like natural ranchers. I mean, they're mail ordering clean meat.
Yep.
The stores that offer it, even my local store here offers a natural meat section. It's everywhere. There's no lack of demand for the product. When I started in natural medicine in the 80s, it was 28% of the American population were seeking an alternative way of doing medicine. In the year 2000, it went to 50-50. And it's actually exceeded that now that people are aware they don't want medicated food, whether it's produce or meat. And once they know about vaccines, which is, COVID has really lit people up, that number has increased substantially. They don't want it. They don't want contaminated foods. And we should be grateful for that. That market is huge. It's not minimal, it's huge. And I think that one of the evidences of that politically is that the medical establishment, veterinary as well as human, is very aggressive. They're more aggressive than they've ever been. I think that the fact that the FDA has whacked back the access to antibiotics did us a favor as well. What are you going to do? I mean, this is a great answer.
Yeah, I think that the fact that that food is more expensive than the other food is proof that the supply hasn't caught up with the demand, right? That's kind of how this market thing works.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And so when the prices get more in line, then we'll see that we're probably getting close to meeting the demand. And I think that I would imagine that nothing accelerated the demand for these things like 2020 and 2021 did, with the medical tyranny that we saw unleashed on the Western world, the developed world, pretty much the whole world, but specifically America, I would say, was a big wake-up call to a lot of people, and they started to question things a lot more than they had before. Does that line up with your experience?
Yes, sir. And I also want to say, too, for the older population that used to use all those live vaccines and all that pour on, there's some detoxing that needs to be done for them too. I commonly tell those fellows that are transitioning over to take that immune boost themselves. Brucellosis is probably one of the biggest contributors to the arthritis and the Parkinson's disease that occurs in high numbers in farmers. So I use that brucellosis remedy to detox on a regular basis. There's a lot of that you shouldn't have been exposed to, and the delusion is it was safe. Reminds me of Roundup when it first came out, as they told us it was concentrated fertilizer and that it was safe. I remember spraying my yard with it, my garden, in shorts and no shoes, thinking that there was no need to protect ourselves. And I think that older population is delusional that it was safe. It's not, it isn't. It isn't safe for the animals either.
Yeah, we've got some time in the schedule today, so if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about how you got into natural medicine. For the bonus content that we're doing later, I would like to talk to you about just some of the natural medicine side of things for the human perspective,
Sure.
and that'll be available for Patreon supporters. But right now, for everybody, I'd like you to just kind of share your journey into this natural medicine field.
Sure. It was actually by referral. I felt I was a pretty healthy human, and I was 30 and realized that I'd never been pregnant at all. So I got a referral to see a homeopath. And I thought, by now I've been to the chiropractor and the acupuncturist and the kahuna healer and anybody else that I've been referred to with no real improvement, even though I think that, those dietary changes that are always recommended are good for you to some degree. I still didn't achieve full function, normal function. So in that experimental period, my husband got shingles, and I asked for a referral, and that first referral to the homeopath was for shingles. And I took my husband in, and they set him in this big clinic. And the MD walked in, looked at him, and says, "Oh my, you have shingles. You take some steroids, here's some antivirals, and the pain could last indefinitely. You could have residual pain, and we'll deal with that later." And I said, "Hey, I'm in the wrong room. I'm here to see a homeopath." And he said, "Oh, well, I'm in the wrong room." He walked out, and the homeopath walked in, looked at his eruptions all over his middle, and he said, "I'm sure that's really miserable, but here, if you take this remedy, it'll be gone in a few days and it'll never come back." So we went to the homeopathic pharmacy and picked up that remedy, and it was highly successful. So I rescheduled for that fertility appointment. And I, as a result of taking that remedy, and they're given to humans typically on a sugar pill. So I got pregnant, and I thought, this is a miracle. That's a blessing from God. And I started reading the books. So by the time my baby was born, I was pretty well versed in studying vaccines, or the theory of them anyway, and never medicated for that pregnancy or that birth. I had my baby at home. So I got pregnant immediately after, and that was life-changing for me, because whatever was broken was fixed without having to start a treatment over. I had no surgeries, no drugs, and a sugar pill. Are you kidding? So what my experience was that I could have long-term health and not just an acute management with huge consequences. So I decided that I enjoyed homeopathy more than my career, and I went back to school, and I grabbed the kids as soon as I got out of school. We moved to Montana so that I could live the way that I felt, I could live my priorities, to have a clean environment, lots of room to garden or to have my own food sources. So then when I got here, I had no idea how to take care of cattle or sheep, or horses for that matter. So what I did was went to the feed stores and the veterinary supplies to see what they were medicating with or protecting the animals from. So I created the remedies at that particular point for my animals, for worms and other parasites, as well as immunizing them with homeopathic prophylaxis. And I've never had a sick animal on my place. So in treating or teaching other families about homeopathy for their health, and my specialty is resolving chronic diseases, getting rid of arthritis or depression or infertility. their question to me was, can you do this for our animals? If you could do this for our households, can you do it for the animals? And I said, I can. So I spent some time being toured, and I'm grateful for my Nebraska connection that took me to farms and ranches in Iowa and Minnesota and all over Nebraska, and talked to those people to see how they were dealing with their problems and what I perceived to be the origin of maybe some of those operational issues. And developed a product line, then began to test it on herds. So, cross fencing is my best friend. It was really easy to medicate different groups in different pastures and in different environments, and came up with some answers that, medicating the salt was genius compared to, trying to do what we can do in a small environment where we're hands-on with our animals. So doing mass numbers was something that is unique to my product. To be able to blend the remedies that I know facilitate wellness and prevent the diseases was also, it's been a 20-year project. So the formulas are reliable. I think that my biggest challenge is that what they call it isn't necessarily what it is. So I have, created solutions for that too by being available. If somebody's got, like I said, they've got pneumonia that's not resolving, I just instantly click over to using that moldy hay and, create resolution for them. So I think the services that our office provides are, needed, and we give them great support. I have products in some of these outlying areas. Nebraska's got a full line of my products available. There's a few items that I'm trying to get into Tractor Supply so that if somebody wanted to treat quicker than I can get a 3-day shipment, that they can walk in and get product. So there's always that window of R&D, and we've accomplished that. The products, like I said, is reliable. It's reasonably priced. The results are great. So my practice is still, I would say, split 60-40 that I do human, disease, and animals. So we ship products all over the country every day. And like I said, I try to be available to problem solve if there is one, which I think is not only significantly important for the ranchers, but also for us to know what which products they're using for what conditions are presented or what weather challenges they might have. Or, I've been told that first dairy I went to was they had recurrent mastitis, which is a staph infection, and ultimately they were told it's in the soil, so cull the herd. So he's going to sell the herd and buy another one. Isn't the soil just as dirty? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Some of the advice and some of the procedures that they follow, it's your immunity that you need to work. Disease is ever present. The wind blows and the birds bring it in. So you got to be able to be a little smarter than that. And we need rid of it. I think that the other thing people don't understand, and I try to educate them, is when we use an antibiotic, we sedate the disease. We never kill it. When they say that, they're not really truthful. So we're going to get it back. At some point, you're going to get a reoccurrence. So to diminish those reoccurrences long term is highly valuable. We have healthier and healthier animals, and we're doing less and less maintenance and less babysitting.
And as with most pesticides, herbicides, all those things, the antibiotics are like any drug. It takes a bigger and bigger dose to achieve the same effect after a period of time. And then eventually the antibiotics become ineffective altogether, and we have to get an even stronger antibiotic. New antibiotics have to come on the market that are even more expensive and all these things. And so it just becomes this massive treadmill that we can't seem to get off of.
There's when we medicate for a bacteria, it forces it to morph. And if that part of that is that antibiotic resistance, but what happens is it becomes a new disease and a new disease. The Merck manual from 1800 is half an inch thick. The Merck manual today is 4 inches thick, and the book is 3 times bigger. I mean, the amount of complications they've solved under the pretense of making us healthier is delusional. More people are medicated and more animals medicated than ever have been before. The dairies can't operate without 3, 4, 5, 6 meds in the ration every day. There's something wrong with that. And the life expectancy of those cattle is remarkably diminished.
Yep. 3.5 lactations on average, I think, is the last number I heard. And, compared to cows routinely milking into their 20s, even in a dairy system, in 1900, in the mid 1900s, even, and I praise God for your story, really, because, I believe God in his common grace gave us a world that had everything in it we needed to thrive. And so for, 6, 8, 10,000 years of human history prior to the advent of modern medicine, we did fine, and these things have come along and maybe we've increased the life expectancy of some, but maybe not the quality of life to the end of their life, of everybody either. So I think there's lots of things to be said for that.
I think that emergency medicine is the most valuable contribution. Treatment is a real problem. So it's nice to have choice. My life journey is about having choice and facilitating people. If you know what's out there, or that you can show people that there are options, then they have choice. And it's being rewarded. There's, like I said, more and more people are more and more interested. I wish I could do it faster. And I wish I could educate, people in mass quantities, which is why the classes are so important. But I just want to facilitate choice. You can choose to roll your eyes or not believe it, or you can choose to embrace it and go, oh my gosh, where's this been all my life? It's been here. It's available. It's just the advertising is, not available for homeopathic products compared to pharmaceuticals, for sure. I also want to say too about natural medicine is homeopathy is unique from essential oils, which is popular right now, and or herbs. Those are physical doses yet. What we're using is an ultra diluted form. We're using 1 part per billion to where it's not being utilized like an herb from your stomach or your bloodstream, like a drug. So the fact that we're instigating the nervous system is what gives us speed and also that high efficiency. So it isn't the same as a drug. Now, of all the alternative medicines, homeopathy is the only one that the FDA regulates. So our products are literally available by the pathology. You can't buy an herb that's for prostate or for pneumonia. It says or implies that it's a lunga for lungs, or it's a prostacare, or they can't tell you that it's for a pathology. In homeopathy, we can. Our products are labeled for what they're useful for. So I think that that's interesting too, that it is a regulated product.
Very good. Ellen, I appreciate your time today. If you'll stick around for a few more minutes, we'll do some bonus content. But for the broader audience, we'll just say thank you for your time today.
Thank you, sir.
Very good stuff there with Ellen. Really appreciate her perspective and just the way that she communicates these things and how she goes about helping people to approach livestock health from a more natural kind of footing, and also spent some time talking to her in the Patreon bonus episode that we did together, talking about the human side of these things and kind of how those things fit together. One thing I did want to make a note of here is that the Bismarck class she mentioned is Friday evening from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on August 23rd. I think she might have said the 22nd there. So there's a class in Bismarck on the livestock, homeopathic livestock remedies, Friday evening from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on August 23rd. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check that out and get let them know you're coming and go learn a little bit more from her, a little bit more in depth, and get your questions answered. Coming up next week on the Working Cows podcast, very excited to welcome back Dr. Alan Williams, and excited for him to join me as we both welcome to the podcast for the first time Dr. Stefan Van Vliet. And I've had a number of people recommend a conversation with Dr. Stefan Van Vliet over recent months. Dr. Sean Baker recommended it. I think also Glenn Elzinga recommended that I talk to him. And we're going to talk to him about some of the groundbreaking research that he's been doing at Utah State University regarding just the polyphenols and all of these other compounds that are found in grass-finished and grass-fed beef that go a long ways to meeting the nutrient requirements of human beings in a very unique way. And so some paradigm-challenging research coming out of the University of the Utah State University and Dr. Stefan Van Vliet and the work that he's been doing. And Alan Williams is going to help me with his expertise facilitate that conversation. So really looking forward to that coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.